have to understand where North Star Systems actually came from. It didn't start in that glass and steel monolith downtown. It didn't start with venture capital funding or synergy meetings. It started in a garage in 2004, smelling of stale pizza and desperation. Harold Wells wasn't a bad man back then. He was just a guy with a vision for a logistics payment platform and a credit score lower than a snake's belly in a wagon rut. I was the one with the credit. I was the one with the technical chops. I met Harold at a networking event where he was trying to pitch his idea to a wall because nobody else would listen. I listened. And because I'm a glutton for punishment, I bought in. But I wasn't an idiot. Even back then, I knew that partnership is just a fancy word for future lawsuit. So when we built the infrastructure, I made a deal. Harold could have the brand, the client list, and the front-end software, the pretty buttons that the customers clicked. But the heavy lifting, the transaction servers, the encryption bridges, the actual metal boxes that processed the money, I bought those. Me, personally. I formed a separate LLC, Ironclad Holdings, and I leased the infrastructure back to North Star. It was a tax move at first, a way to protect assets. Harold loved it because it kept the debt off North Star's books while we were trying to get loans. He signed the Master Service Agreement, MSA, without even reading the fine print. The fine print said this: the lease for the critical infrastructure is valid only so long as Michelle Vance is employed as the chief infrastructure architect of North Star Systems. Upon termination of her employment for any reason other than gross criminal negligence, the lease terminates immediately. For 20 years, that contract sat in a fireproof safe, gathering dust. North Star grew. We moved out of the garage. We hired staff. Harold got rich. I got comfortable. And then Harold got old, and he decided to retire to a golf course in Florida, handing the keys to the kingdom over to Claire, who thought the cloud was actual magic, and not just someone else's computer. Claire, who had spent the last 5 years finding herself in Bali on the company dime while I was pulling all-nighters patching security vulnerabilities. She hated me from day one. I represented everything she wasn't: competent, self-made, and essential. To her, I was just the grump in the corner office who said no to her expensive, stupid ideas. I sat in the bar, swirling the amber liquid in my glass, remembering the look on Harold's face when we landed our first $1 million client. He had hugged me, tears in his eyes, and said, "Michelle, you're the bedrock of this place. We don't exist without you." Well, Harold, you were right. I pulled up the remote admin terminal on my phone, not for North Star, but for Ironclad Holdings. The interface was simple, black background, green text. No fancy graphics, just raw data. The logs were scrolling by faster now. 14-15-00 handshake failed. 14-15-01 handshake failed. 14-15-02 connection refused. Authentication token revoked. It wasn't that I had shut off the servers. I wasn't malicious. I simply stopped authenticated traffic. The servers were running fine. They were humming away in a climate-controlled data center 3 towns over, which I paid for. They just weren't talking to North Star anymore because North Star was no longer a paying tenant. It was like changing the locks on a rental house when the squatter finally leaves. I checked the North Star internal Slack again. It was a bloodbath. DevOps Steve, guys, why is the API returning a 403 forbidden on everything? Project MGR Sarah, clients are calling. The payment portal is down. Is this scheduled maintenance? DevOps Steve, I can't get into the server root. My keys aren't working. It's like the server doesn't exist. Sales Brad, I just lost a transaction mid-closing. What is happening? Then the message I was waiting for. CEO Claire, at everyone stop panicking. IT is fixing it. It's just a glitch from the transition. Michelle sabotaged a few codes on her way out. We will have it back up in 5 minutes. Sabotage, that was cute. She was already spinning the narrative. She was going to try and paint me as the disgruntled employee who cut the wires. She didn't realize that by accusing me of sabotage, she was admitting she had no control over her own product. I took a screenshot of her message. That would be useful later. My phone buzzed. It wasn't a Slack message this time. It was a call. Caller ID Harold Wells Mobile. I stared at the screen. Harold. He must have been on the 9th hole when his phone started blowing up. I debated answering. I really did. There was a part of me, the part that remembered the pizza in the garage, that wanted to pick up and explain it to him gently. But then I remembered the boardroom. I remembered the silence of the men I had worked with for 2 decades. I remembered Claire's laugh. I let it go to voicemail. I wasn't the bedrock anymore. I was the landslide. The bartender, Joe, wandered back over. You all right, darlin'? You look like you're watching a car wreck. I am, Joe, I said, sliding a 20 across the bar. But I'm not in the car. I'm the one who designed the intersection. I opened my email app. I had drafted a message to my lawyer, David, earlier that morning. David was a shark in a suit, a man who charged $800 an hour and was worth every penny. The subject line was, Activation of Clause 14. B. Ironclad Holdings vs. North Star Systems. I hit send. Legal war hadn't even started yet, but the tactical nuke had already been dropped. I ordered some jalapeno poppers. I figured I needed some sustenance. Watching an empire burn is hungry work. By 3:00 p.m., The 5-minute glitch had turned into a 45-minute catastrophe. The rusty anchor was starting to fill up with the early happy hour crowd, mostly blue-collar guys dusting off drywall or oil grease. But my attention was glued to the digital window I had into my old life. I still had access to the chaotic symphony of the Hash Engineering channel. Why? Because I was the one who set up the SSO, single sign-on permissions, and I had buried my own admin rights so deep in the kernel of the authentication server that God himself would need a search warrant to find them. Claire's team of cloud natives wouldn't find that backdoor for weeks. DevOps Steve. Okay. I've tried rebooting the gateway. Nothing. I've tried rerouting the DNS. Nothing. The IP addresses for the transaction nodes are just gone. It's like they fell off the face of the earth. Junior Dev Kyle, Steve, I just ran a trace route. It's stopping at the ISB level. The destination host isn't accepting traffic from our domain. CTO interim Gary, the guy they hired last week, visionary from Silicon Valley who wears scarves in July, just posted, "Have we tried flushing the cache?" I laughed out loud, startling a guy next to me eating wings. Flushing the cache. It was like trying to fix a decapitation with a Band-Aid. The problem wasn't code. The problem was hardware ownership. The servers that processed the payments, specifically the high-volume, secure clusters required by banking regulations, resided in a rack at a co-location facility in Dallas. That rack was leased to Ironclad Holdings. Northstar Systems connected to it via a dedicated encrypted VPN tunnel. When I walked out, I didn't break the code. I just revoked the VPN certificate. The tunnel collapsed. Northstar was currently shouting its transaction data into a void. Then came the first real casualty. Sales VP Karen, no relation to the meme, but acts like it Claire. The Bank of Annieville just called. Their customers are getting transaction declined on every swipe at the grocery store. They are threatening to pull the contract. That's $1 account, do something. I took a bite of a jalapeno popper, spicy, just like the situation in the server room. I imagined the scene on the 40th floor. The panic, the frantic typing, the smell of nervous sweat battling against the HVAC system. Claire would be screaming by now. She wasn't used to things not working. In her world, if the Wi-Fi was slow, you yelled at the barista. But you can't yell at a server rack. It doesn't care about your dad's money. I decided to twist the knife a little. Not directly, I couldn't interact or I'd show my hand too early, but I could check the logs of the backup system I had insisted they build 3 years ago. Ah, yes, the backup system. One Claire had defunded last budget cycle because redundancy is just paying twice for the same service. I navigated to the backup logs. Last backup, 8 months ago. Status, corrupted. Reason, storage limit exceeded. Subscription canceled by user, C. Wells. She had canceled the cloud storage subscription for the backups to save $500 a month, on a company generating $50 million a year. The sheer, staggering incompetence was almost poetic. It was grimecore poetry, written in binary. My phone rang again. This time it wasn't Harold, it was Gary, the scarf-wearing interim CTO. I watched it ring. Ring, ring. I picked up, not to help, but to gather intelligence. "This is Michelle," I said, keeping my voice cool and professional like I was taking a reservation for dinner. "Michelle, thank God," Gary sounded breathless. "Look, there's been a misunderstanding. The transition seems to have snagged on some legacy protocols. We need the admin keys for the server cluster, just the root passwords. We can handle it from there." "Gary," I said, "I don't work for Northstar anymore. Giving you passwords would be a violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. I can't access systems I'm not authorized for. Don't give me that legal crap," he snapped. The visionary facade was cracking. "Claire is breathing down my neck. The system is down. Just text me the damn password and we'll call it even." "Call it even?" I asked. "Gary, do you know where those servers are physically located?" "The cloud?" He guessed. "No, Gary, they are in a building in Dallas. A building I pay rent on. A rack I own. You're asking for the keys to my house." "Wait," he paused. "You own the hardware?" "I own the metal, the silicon, and the electricity running through it. Since my lease agreement with Northstar was terminated at 2:15 p.m. today, you are currently trespassing on my bandwidth." "Jesus," he whispered. "Does Claire know?" "She's about to find out," I said. "Good luck, Gary. I hope your resume is up to date." I hung up. The first ripple had turned into a wave. The tech team now knew this wasn't a bug. It was a structural void. They were trying to drive a car that had no engine, and they had just realized the hood was welded shut. I ordered another bourbon. The sun was starting to dip lower in the Texas sky, casting long, orange shadows across the bar. It was the golden hour. Appropriate. I was about to watch their golden goose get cooked. You know the saying, bad news travels fast? In the age of Twitter, X, bad news travels at the speed of fiber optics. By 4:30 p.m., #Northstar Down was trending locally in Austin and Dallas. I scrolled through the feed on my phone. It was beautiful. At Angry Mom TX, my card just got declined at the pharmacy for my kids' asthma meds. The pharmacist said the processor is down. Thanks at Northstar Sys for almost killing my kid. #fail at CryptoBro99, Northstar Systems is rug pulling. Can't access my merchant dashboard. Is this another FTX? At DeVito fan for life, ironically. This guy had a profile pic of Danny DeVito, just tried to pay my employees via Northstar. System dead. Guess we're paying an exposure this week. It wasn't just complaints. It was the digital dismantling of a brand's reputation in real time. And the best part? Claire's social media team, 2 unpaid interns and a brand evangelist named Tyler, were silent. They couldn't post because they couldn't log into their dashboard either. The social media scheduling tool was linked to the central authentication server, the one I owned. Oops. Back in the internal Slack, the panic had shifted from technical confusion to existential dread. HR Director Linda, everyone? I just tried to run the bi-weekly payroll batch. It failed. Error 503. Does anyone know if we can cut paper checks? Accounting Bob, paper checks? Linda, we have 400 employees spread across 3 states. Don't even have a check printer anymore. Claire threw it out last month to make room for the kombucha tap. The kombucha tap. I shook my head. That tap cost $5,000. The backup server subscription was $500. Priorities. Then came the extra pickles moment, the detail that exposed the rot. A notification popped up in the #general channel, which was usually reserved for birthday announcements and lost and found. Because the payment processor was failing, the automated error logs were spitting out raw transaction data into the chat as a default failsafe. I had set that up years ago to debug specific errors, but I never turned it off. System error, failed transaction. Vendor, Elite Private Jet Charters. Amount, $45,000. Memo, CEO Retreat Cabo. Status, declined insufficient infrastructure. The chat froze. The employees, who had been told last week that there was no money for cost of living raises, were now staring at a declined $45K charge for a CEO retreat to Cabo. Senior Dev Mike, Cabo? I thought she was at a strategic partner summit in Houston. Marketing Jen, we laid off 3 designers yesterday to streamline costs. Dev Ops Steve, I'm done. I'm literally watching my rent money vanish while she tries to fly to Cabo. Does anyone have Michelle's number? She's the only one who actually did anything around here. I sipped my drink. The mutiny wasn't being led by a charismatic revolutionary. It was being led by a failed jet charter payment. It was grime-core reality. The dirty laundry wasn't just aired. It was being live-streamed to the people whose livelihoods were being laundered. Suddenly, my access to Slack cut out. Connection lost. They had finally found the kill switch for my account. It took them 3 hours. Frankly, I was disappointed. I expected better from Gary, but the damage was done. The screenshots were already circulating. I saw a screenshot of the Cabo transaction pop up on Twitter 5 minutes later, posted by an anonymous account named Northstar Exile. Claire wasn't just fighting a tech failure anymore. She was fighting a class war within her own building. I signaled for the check. The first phase was complete. The technical infrastructure was dead. Social capital was incinerated. Now it was time for the money men to get involved. I walked out of the bar into the cooling evening air. The Texas sunset was a bruise of purple and red across the horizon. I had a meeting to prepare for. Not a scheduled one, but one I knew was coming. My phone buzzed, a text message. From David, lawyer, they just called. Their general counsel is threatening a temporary restraining order and an injunction. I told them to read clause 14. B again, they hung up. I think they're crying. I typed back, let them cry, it hydrates the skin. I got into my truck. The engine roared to life, a deep, reliable sound. Unlike Northstar, my truck worked because I took care of it. I maintained it. I respected it. Claire treated her company like a rental car she bought insurance for. She was about to find out that acts of God don't cover acts of Michelle. Harold Wells was a man who believed in handshake deals and the sanctity of a golf handicap. He was currently in Naples, Florida, wearing linen pants that cost more than my mortgage payment, likely nursing a scotch and staring at the Gulf of Mexico. I could picture him perfectly. He'd be holding his phone like it was a grenade that had just had the pin pulled. And it had. The first voicemail appeared on my phone at 5:15 p.m. I didn't listen to it yet. I drove home, a nice ranch-style place on 3 acres outside the city limits. I had bought it with the bonuses Harold gave me back when he still ran the show. It was quiet here. No sirens, no corporate buzzwords, just crickets and the distant hum of the highway. I poured myself a glass of iced tea. I was done with the bourbon for now. I needed a clear head for the Endgame and sat on my back porch. I finally pressed play on the voicemail. Michelle, it's Harold. Look, I'm hearing some disturbing things from the board. Claire says you sabotaged the system, says you planted a virus. I told her that didn't sound like you, but the bank just called me, Michelle. The bank. They say our merchant processors are offline. Call me back. We need to fix this. His voice was shaky. It lacked the booming confidence of the man who used to sell vaporware to venture capitalists. He sounded old. I didn't call back. 10 minutes later, another voicemail. Michelle, pick up the damn phone. Gary says you own the servers? What the hell is he talking about? We own the company. How can you own the servers? I don't remember signing that. This is blackmail, isn't it? Whatever you want, we can discuss it. Just turn it back on. Claire is in over her head. I know that. Just help me out here for old time's sake. For old time's sake. The phrase hung in the humid air. I remembered old times. I remembered when the payroll system crashed in 2009, and I paid the engineers out of my own savings account so they wouldn't walk, and Harold promised to pay me back with interest.